Welcome back to another episode of Life in the Stands podcast. Uh, we're really excited to bring an episode today with an update on all of our March Madness predictions. I think we did pretty well through those, so we're excited to kind of dive back into that and give some more predictions for. Okay, but we did okay on it. We'll give some more predictions for the rest of the tournament as well. Real quick, remember to follow us on Twitter at stands_life. That is where we're most active, so make sure to go shoot us a follow there and start interacting with us. You can also follow us on TikTok and Spotify at Life in the Stands. We are now on iHeartRadio and Amazon Music and Audible as well at Life in the Stands. Remember to like and subscribe on YouTube. And one more thing before we let Bender run away with the March Madness bracket and we jump back into some more picks and more future predictions. We're going to do a quick shout out here to this beautiful logo here on this crew neck. We do have Life in the Stands crew necks now. So if there's interest beyond just the Life in the Stands team wearing these, then we can definitely open that up. But with that being said, Bender, let's go ahead and pull up our bracket, talk about how we did, and talk about what else we think is going to happen.
Yeah, so this is the updated bracket. I will tell you right now where we went wrong at. But what really killed our bracket was more of the Auburn and Kentucky crisis that happened in the first round. I think we had both of those teams going to the Sweet 16, and we actually had Kentucky beating Marquette, um, where NC State is currently. So that's kind of a bummer there. And honestly, the way Zach mentioned it is perfect because I feel like we didn't do too bad. I thought we did pretty good. A lot of our wrong picks came from Auburn and Kentucky, and then also our tiebreaker picks. So it's like one of us was right, one of us was wrong. So give or take, the two of us probably had maybe 8 to 10 losses instead of a total of 12 each. So um, yeah, if you follow along, let me know if your bracket is better than ours, because I guarantee it probably is. Let's go to the UConn San Diego State game that's going to be played in a couple days here. I'm going to go with UConn. San Diego State's look real good. I didn't expect this from them. I'm not going to lie. I think they kind of escaped the second round matchup because I thought that was going to be Auburn. I thought Auburn would beat them. So they kind of escaped that matchup, but you play who you have to play. But
Yeah.
UConn in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, right? You play who you have to play. I think they definitely got an easier draw of it in the second round. Auburn just kind of laid an egg in that first round matchup. But I mean, honestly, San Diego State didn't look that great against UAB. That was a close game too. So I think UConn runs away with this one. I mean, UConn's been winning their tournament games. How many? I think they have 8 double-digit tournament wins in a row at this point,
Yeah.
going back over the last couple of years because they're champions and like the wins before that. So yeah, I mean, I got UConn in this game, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close. I think UConn, and they probably win by double digits again.
Yeah, I think that's the furthest, I want to call it like a skill gap, competition gap that we have this upcoming weekends or slate of games. I think UConn's just gonna blow away with this one again, like they did with the last two matchups or 8 matchups, like you
Yeah,
just said. Um, let's go down to Illinois versus Iowa State, stay on the same side of the bracket here. Who do you have in this one?
I think this is going to be a really good game. I think both teams have looked really good in the tournament. Both teams have a lot of momentum coming into this game. I think I'm gonna take Illinois. I'm gonna take Illinois because they were a conference winner, right? And when you look at their body of work so far in the tournament, they look really dominant. They've had some slow starts, but I think that team is poised for a deeper run than maybe I would have anticipated before seeing them play in the tournament. So I'm gonna go Illinois on this one.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Illinois. The thing with this matchup, to me, is more of just the momentum that was gained by Illinois compared to Iowa State. I feel like Iowa State played a lot of closer games and had like a slower start in the South Dakota State game, slower start in the Washington State game. They finally pulled away at the end there. Illinois has kind of been handling business besides maybe the first round game, but I think that's also day one jitters as well. I think as soon as they got past that first half, they blew them out. Didn't mess around with Duquesne, blew them out. Um, I think Illinois just flat out looks better than Iowa State at this point, so I'm going to take them.
Yeah, the momentum is there for sure.
Yeah, and let's move on to my favorite matchup coming up here. It's going to be Marquette and NC State. Um, I want NC State to win this game, but Marquette will win this game. I like Burns. I like the big boy on that team. They have a lot of size, but Marquette's one of those teams where they play together. Leading assist man Kolek is on that team
Yeah.
in the nation. Um, so I think it's just going to be too much. I like to see kind of like the matchup, see if they have enough size to keep up with NC State as well.
Yeah.
Um, Intriguing matchup, but I think Marquette's still the better team.
Yeah, I agree. Marquette's the better team. Kolek looked fantastic against Colorado. He had a great game there, super efficient. And honestly, props to NC State. Again, you play who you play, but they had to get past the 14th seed Oakland team to get here. And I think when you walk into that game against Marquette, it's just going to be a different atmosphere, different feeling. And I don't think they have enough pieces to compete with a Marquette right now. But good run for NC State.
Yeah, for sure. Again, if they win, I'm not gonna argue
Yep,
with that.
yep.
So, um, I think this is where people are gonna get fooled. I'm gonna listen to your take here first between Duke and Houston. Who you got with this one?
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. I think this might actually be my favorite matchup of this round of games, just because it feels like really conflicting styles, right? Houston wants to get up and down, they want to jump all around, be super athletic, like do all those kinds of things. And Duke, I would say, is much more, like skill oriented, right? Like they're trying to get Filipowski the ball and do some different things. So I think this is a really intriguing matchup of like styles. But I'm going to go Houston in this one. I think Houston will overpower Duke a little bit. I think they're going to get up and down a little bit too fast for Duke. And even though Duke has looked better in the tournament a little bit, they blew out James Madison, obviously looked great there. But I think Houston and their close game with Texas A&M is actually going to give them the kind of what's the word I'm looking for, like greaser that they need to be ready for a game against Duke and have some experience in a close contested tournament game already. So I think that'll actually fare well for them. So I'm going to go Houston in this one.
Yeah, I also have Houston. Again, like you said, intriguing matchup, but Houston still has a top defense. I know Texas A&M just put up a 95 ball against them. OT game though. Shouldn't have even went to OT, to be honest with you. I think it's very resilient of Houston to win that game. And I say that just because they had three guys foul out. Just to show depth is a great sign for them and being able to close out that game the way they did. You have other options. Um, I think Texas A&M was a much better team than a 9 seed. So I think that was a good test for them. And I think that's what the greaser, is that what you called it? I think that
Right.
test or greaser or whatever is what they need to go against Duke or anybody else that they may face in this tournament if they get past Duke. Just because these matchups are going to get even harder.
Yep.
More competition, closer games, hopefully closer games. UConn over here just
Yeah.
acting like people were terrible. Um,
It's
but no,
interesting. Oh, go ahead.
no. I was gonna say, just to conclude, I think Houston still has a lot of guard play that's going to overpower Duke's style of play.
Yeah.
You wanted to talk about styles of play. I know they have big dude in the middle, but um, I don't think they have enough.
Yeah. And what I was going to say too is I think it's interesting in the tournament. You've already heard us talk about a little bit. You want to have some of those big wins and you want to build momentum if you're a top seed, possibly blowing out that lower seed. But at the same time, once you get into that second and third round, the conversation starts to shift to like, if you're blowing everyone out, if you get in a close game, how is your team going to handle that? So I think we're at the point in the tournament where you kind of want to start to see a mix of both and be able to see a team that can run away with a game, but also a team that can battle, scrap, have three or four guys foul out in the game and still pull off a W. So I think that's why we both like Houston in this situation.
Again, the perfect story. They go and blow out Longwood, pull out a close game, OT game. Um, the story you don't want, I'm not saying I'm concerned about them, but the story you don't want is a 40-point win, almost a 20-point win over here. So that's kind of how I look at it. Um,
Sure.
Now that the matchups are a little bit different, I believe we had Kentucky over Marquette here.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of throws a wrench into that. So we would actually have Houston versus Marquette now, and we would still have Illinois and UConn.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious to see who comes out of this weekend, but um, don't be surprised if a team like Iowa State or NC State win these games down here. I think these are more toss-up games
Yeah.
than you think. Um, I know people are going to say this is a toss-up game with Houston Duke. We just talked about it. Um, I think these two top games between UConn, San Diego State, and Houston Duke will be the furthest margin of victory compared to the bottom two matchups.
Yeah. And in general, I think the one seeds this year have been pretty dominant, more dominant than we've seen in the past. Yeah, obviously they win their games most of the time, but for all of them to make it into this round and all of them to have the kind of wins that they've had, I think one seeds have really, really shown why they're one seeds this year.
Yeah, for sure. I think in the last episode, though, I mentioned it's very uncommon, and I don't think it's ever happened that three or more one seeds make the final four, and we're already dropped down to two. Um, so again, if you made your bracket this year and you picked nothing but one seeds, you didn't go with the odds.
Oh wait, do we have four more games? There should be four more games, right?
Nope, we got NC State, Marquette, Illinois, Iowa State.
Well, no, there's the bottom half of the bracket because it's yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. Here we go. Here we go.
oh.
So we do have all four one seeds still.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. That was a big mess up. My fault.
That's cool.
Um,
Okay. Let's jump into these games though. So North Carolina, Alabama, which again, really interesting game. What do you think, Bender?
I like Sears. Sears is going to overpower North Carolina. North Carolina is a great team, a lot of experience, but Sears is that guy, straight up.
Yeah, Bama's looked good too. I don't know. I do like a lot of what UNC has though. I think UNC is deeper than Bama is at this point. Um, I would take UNC in that game. That would be one that we would have contested. But that'll be a good one, and it shows you that maybe those top four games we are pretty much on the same page with those. These bottom four might not be as as clear cut.
Yeah, and honestly, where my brain went to was more of there's only one game that's important to me in this bracket, honestly, like this section. So that's probably where my brain went to because I think this will be a good game here between Carolina and Bama. I think Clemson is just on a roller coaster, and they're going to plummet against Arizona. So that's how I
I
feel
think
about that.
Arizona runs through them. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, my brain got thrown for a loop once again, per usual. We're used to that. And then I don't even think this one's going to be close. The way Creighton played against Oregon, I know they closed out the game, but watching them, it just seems like they're very 3-point dominant. All it takes is one team to lock up or for Creighton to start missing shots and they're done for in my opinion. So I'm taking Tennessee.
Yeah, I think Tennessee's the more consistent team there. And I agree. Teams that are living and dying by the 3-point line, if you don't have anything else, that's an issue. And watching that Oregon Creighton game, it was kind of disgusting sometimes. Like it was just like who's taking the next three, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's pretty much what you're watching. So I like Tennessee in that game too. So Arizona, I think they blow out Clemson. We think Tennessee, we're in agreement that they probably overpower Creighton. North Carolina, Bama, close game. We're kind of contested there. What's your take on Purdue Gonzaga?
It disgusts me so much because I hate Purdue with a burning passion. You and I
Wait,
talked about it.
can I interrupt? I
Please say what you told me. Please say exactly what you said to
yeah,
me
I
because it
I
made my
forget
day.
I forget when we were talking Bender, but I texted Bender, or maybe we were on the phone, and I was like, Bender, I have a confession. And he was like, "What are you about to say to me?" Because normally when I say stuff like that, I say something ridiculous afterwards. But this time I was like, Bender, I hate watching Zach Edey. I hate watching it. If I was 7'4", I could do what Zach Edey does on the basketball court. It's a lot of right hooks. It's a lot of people hanging on him because that's all they can do. And it's a lot of rebounds. And like I understand the conversation about people where it's like you don't want to say he's bad at basketball. No, like Zach Edey is a good basketball player. But if he was a foot shorter, he'd probably have to have a different skill set and a different bag than what he has. But obviously the height makes him what he is. I think the most telling part of the whole conversation though is if you talk or hear about NBA scouts talk about Zach Edey, it's like, yeah, like maybe he's a backup, like maybe he turns into like Boban.
Yeah, that's about it. And what really frustrates me, you talk about his bag. One move over his left shoulder for a right hook. I'm gonna hit you with this elbow, not have an offensive foul call on me. Boom, that's a defensive foul apparently, and then you go up and you right hook it.
What I
Um,
love about that is that with that right hook, when I was watching the last Purdue game, the announcers were like, "Look at that quick, decisive move right to the left shoulder." I'm like, at some point, it's not a quick, decisive move; it's just the only move.
yeah,
Like the reason he's doing it that fast is because that's all he has.
I hate people. People are just so stupid. I can't. I I hope they choke. Gonzaga is a very good team. I hope they choke.
Gonzaga is a
Um,
very good team.
Gonzaga has the size to do it, I think, too. So I think that's going to be where Purdue loses if they lose. So here's the other thing, like Creighton and Tennessee are guard-oriented teams. So I think that's going to kill them if they end up playing Purdue here. So I think Gonzaga
Right.
has to win that game. I don't think they will,
Yeah, I
just
mean,
because I think Purdue has their crap together this year.
right. They have other players other than Edie that can actually handle the ball, shoot, whatever. But I think you're right. Like if Purdue wins, they're definitely winning their next game because those two teams can't match up. But it would be interesting. I think out of the four teams that could play them next between North Carolina, Bama, and the two teams that are in the game slightly lower than this, um, North Carolina, Bama, Arizona, and Clemson. Yeah, I think Arizona matches up the best with the Purdue because of Balo. And
But you would have to wait for the championship game too. So
right,
like these guys over here between Bama, UNC, Clemson, Arizona, they're gonna have to run through more than likely UConn before they get to that point.
yeah,
Um, Houston's also a very good defensive team, so I think if Houston and Purdue played each other, I don't count that out either. I think it's going to be Gonzaga, Houston, or Arizona that can beat
I think
Purdue.
one thing that might happen too is Purdue might just get outscored because they're not a super prolific offensive team. Outside of Edie, right? So I think another thing that might happen is you might see them lose a 85 to 90 kind of a game just from being outscored. I could see
Yeah,
teams
and
just putting Edie in the pick and roll over and over and
yeah,
over.
and the hardest part about uh, playing against Purdue is that Edie draws so much attention, and you're not wanting to give up that easy right hook. Um, they're like a top three-point shooting team because they get open looks off of his post ups.
Right,
So you almost have to play the game of give up twos. Hopefully he misses every now and then you run the court
right.
um, because he can't get back. So that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Just to get right back at it, I think Purdue beats Tennessee here just because of what we talked about. Um, and then, I mean, this is a toss up. I think odds are North Carolina beats Bama. I wouldn't count Bama out, but I think Arizona goes through whoever comes from this game.
Yeah, I think so too. So I think you're probably looking at like Arizona and Purdue coming out of
Yeah.
this one here. So you got Arizona and
So
Purdue.
you would have UConn versus Arizona. You'd have Purdue versus Houston
Right.
is what we're
I think
at.
Houston comes out of that game, and I think UConn comes out of that game.
Yeah. I think those are the two most consistent and best teams all year. I
Yep.
wouldn't say maybe consistent with Houston, but I think Houston now has the experience and they know how to grind through a tournament. Um, so I think that'll be intriguing. It's all about matchups now. It's not
Yep.
even about like random guessing in the first round. Now it's actually about matchups. You have a couple days to prepare for these teams. So maybe coaching comes into a factor here,
Yep.
but another random thing to think about. See this where the Final Four is being played at? Arizona. Arizona makes it there. I know UConn's good, but that's home court.
Could make a really big difference. Yeah, it can make a really big difference. So, yeah, I mean, so I guess at the end of this, our champion probably still stays the same. You have UConn over Houston.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that stays the same from our initial picks and predictions as well. Um, so yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we didn't do too bad with this. Compared to a lot of March Madness brackets. Next year
It's
we'll
hard to
get it
pick.
perfect. Next year we'll get it perfect.
As I was about to say, it's hard to get a perfect bracket. This dude says we're gonna have a perfect bracket. I want y'all to remember he just said that
Yeah, right, right.
when
Yeah, but thanks again for listening, guys. I know this is a little bit of a shorter episode, but wanted to get in here and sort of update the March Madness bracket, give the rest of our predictions for what we think is going to happen through the championship game. Even though I guess those final final picks aren't that different than what we originally had in that episode. Some slight changes. But remember to follow us on Twitter at stands_life. That's where we're most active. Remember to follow us on TikTok and Spotify at Life in the Stands. We're also on iHeartRadio and Amazon Music at Life in the Stands now. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. It really helps us out. And we will see you guys on the next episode.